So what have we got? We've got acknowledgement that the people, situations, and circumstances in our lives change, always have, always will, and that as those changes occur, so do the requirements for our success, and that in order for us to be able to meet those changing requirements for our success, we must be willing to consider and try alternatives to the status quo. Do you see that happening in the organizations you work for? Do you see the dynamic in the marketplace continuously changing and there being an ongoing search for better ways, better products, better services, better take to market, better marketing? We must be willing to consider and try alternatives to the status quo. And this last, the subtitle, Happily Ever Afters Don't Just Happen, calls for some explanation. I am convinced that one of the barriers to sustaining success in our culture is a cultural phenomenon born of conditioning influences that we have been exposed to early in life. I believe that most of us as adults have done a pretty good job of divesting ourselves of some of these childhood myths. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and for those of you who haven't crossed that river yet, I apologize. But there is one that is tenacious in its grip on us, and it's the one that I refer to, the happily ever after cycle. And I have put together a model that I'm going to get you to work through with me, and the reason we're going to work through it is this finding better ways requires us to begin by looking for an alternative to this. We could use any number of experiences to illustrate this point, but the one I've chosen and I'm going to get you to think about with me as we go through is the first day on the best new job we've ever had. I want you to think back, your first day on the best new job you ever had. You got that? Now for some of you that's been so long ago you can't remember, like me. So in those cases, just think about folks you've seen show up first day on this great new job. What kind of feelings do we have first day on this great new job? Anybody? Excitement. No extra points for that because it's written up there. But okay, I'll accept it. Yeah, that it is exciting. It is exciting, isn't it? How else might we feel first day? Apprehensive. Maybe scared even. And even though I took great pains to describe it as the best new job we've ever had, wouldn't we all agree that there is some anxiety, apprehension, trepidation, whatever you want to, fear this first day? And I suspect that there are many causes. Primary cause, I think, would be what? The uncertainty. There are things we know about the job or we never would have taken, but would you agree that anytime we have change forced upon us, there is some uncertainty about it, or we voluntarily get into something, there's some things we're uncertain about, and I am convinced that one of the characteristics of the human condition is we create anxiety when we are confronted with uncertainty, and there is some uncertainty. So one side of the coin is apprehension, the other side is excitement. Would you agree with me that excitement is the dominant feeling this first day on the great new job? I have a theory about what we use to create this excitement, and again, it goes back to these conditioning influences we were exposed to when we were little, specifically the stories. Do you remember the stories that we were read? Different plots, different characters, but they all ended the same way, didn't they? And they lived happily ever after. Now think about it. In the first few pages, our kids fall in love with the main characters, don't they? The Hansels and the Gretels. In the next few pages, what happens to them? Bad stuff. I mean, things that in the real world would never happen. If they did, nobody would ever get out of it. Am I right? Imagine for a moment being captured by a witch and thrown into a cage and fattened up so she can eat you. Try getting that one published in America today. But not to fear. In the last few pages, not only do they escape, they live happily ever after, over and over and over again, and it plants a seed. And I'm convinced this first day, many people show up on their new job expecting that this is going to be their what? Their happily ever after job. Now, we're adults. We're not going to talk about it. I'm not going to come up to Chris first day on the new job, tell him how excited I am to be at Ford Motor Company because it's my happily ever after job. Because if I do, as soon as I walk away, he'll find whoever hired me and say, I think we made a real mistake with that old boy. But don't we see behavior this first day that indicates there is some excitement? What are some things we might see people do day one that we're probably not going to be seeing them do much past day one? Things like what? Show up? Who said show up? Show me yourself. Show up early, right? How early? It's dark, right? They're in. And what kind of attire can we expect people to wear first day? Their best credibility costume, right? They've got the new clothes or the clean clothes, the pressed clothes, the hair's fixed just right. Have you noticed how much smiling there is the first day? A lot of grinning going on. Have you noticed that people on first day will ask questions and listen to the answers? Have you noticed that on the first day they probably won't look at their watch, may work through lunch and stay late? They are what? They are fired up. Here's my question. How long does that euphoria last? Till lunch, she said? Would you agree it's going to vary from person to person and situation to situation? Let's agree on a range, and you might write this down somewhere because we may come back to it. Let's agree that this initial euphoria is going to last somewhere from 45 minutes to 6 weeks. How's that sound? Is that about right? And 45 minutes to 6 weeks later, what happens to the new? It always wears off, doesn't it? The new by definition is a temporary deal, isn't it? It doesn't stay new forever. The new wears off. And in this job example, as the new wears off, what's likely to happen to that initial enthusiasm? Well, we start to see it wane, don't we? It starts to go down a little bit. And this is where the shrinks tell us we get into a step, a process that most of us are quite familiar with, denial. I don't know what it means clinically, but it seems to me practically denial is nothing more than us trying to pretend or convince ourselves that what's happening isn't happening. Do you ever do that? I mean, do you ever think you ever engage in denial? Most people don't know, not me. My guess is that's not true. My guess is you can catch yourself if you'll just pay attention, let's say the next time you're driving somewhere, if it's in traffic at all. My guess is at the very least you will think and may even say out loud several times, they can't do that while they're doing it. You understand what I mean? They can't do that. They can't pull in there. They can't pull out there. We try to convince ourselves, and I suspect that the same phenomenon's at work here with the new job. The new's wearing off. I'm not as excited as I used to be. This can't be happening because this is supposed to be my happily ever after job, but we come to the realization that it is happening, and we get into the steps we're far more familiar with, not necessarily comfortable. Mind you, the next stop is fear. What are we afraid of here? I submit to you we're afraid that we once again have what? We have failed to find what? Happily ever after. I'm afraid this isn't it. I'm afraid this is happening. I'm afraid they do expect me to work with him or her. Is fear a comfortable place to be? No, we're going to get out of fear as quickly as possible, get to one we're far more comfortable with. And that's anger. The reason we're comfortable with anger is we can focus it out there where it belongs. Who do we blame for this unhappy turn of events? Well, it's them, isn't it? Who might some of them be? And if they're in the room, don't feel like you got to shout their name. You know, it kind of starts at the top, doesn't it? There's the boss. If you told me everything there was to know about this job, I never would have taken it in the first place, right? Then there's a fellow. You ever hear any of this? Then there's a fellow worker's dead wood. Then there's other departments and other divisions and other specialties in the organization who have no empathy or sensitivity to what we're trying to do here, right? And then in the marketplace, there's the competitors, liars, and then there are the customers, fools.